That's what we're talking about. We don't see that. It looks like a reference out there. Okay. Sounds good. Well, where's Ben? Guess they're still coming in.
She's a brunette. Yes.
No, is this on? I don't know. I'm not tall and slower this. Know where Ben is?
He was just standing.
Yeah. 5:01. We're already late.
Well, there's a line right here to the front door.
For signing in.
Yes.
So should we bring in more chairs right now?
Well, they brought in the chairs out of the, they brought in the chairs out of the room and put them on the back wall.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks for coming to get all this stuff.
Oh, you're welcome.
We're just not gonna roll it out there. I think general system comment only at work meetings. I think we ought to, because we don't.
We're ready?
Yes. It's a work meeting. It's just-
Selena?
I wonder if we ought to make it clear. Something that's not on the agenda.
Are we good?
Are we ready?
Are we ready?
So that would be the devil's third state. Someone.
Wait, what about the sign? They did tell me if we gave them the supplies, Mary said she could. But she also talked to me about extending the, I don't know if I got it. Have you guys talked about that? So we have to buy a diamond block, if that's cheaper and easier.
Either way.
Okay. I need to talk to you about the 24th. Maybe see, or do you go out like to all the parks? I just want to meet you there sometime.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? We have a whole new sound system, so hopefully we're loud enough. So my name is Jarrett Waite. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 5:04. We still have people filing in, but that'll be okay while we go through our opening ceremony. And there are plenty of seats over on this side, so we may need to slide over a little bit or make sure you come around to the other side. So we'd like to start with our opening ceremony. Oh, sorry, I want to do our call to order. So like I said, I'm Jarrett Waite, We have Councilman Ben Shakespeare, Councilwoman Lena Mathis, Councilwoman Krista Hinton, and Councilman Denny Drake with us. We have a full council. We will excuse Mayor. He is doing what he does best, fishing in Alaska. So we'll miss him, but wish him well there. So we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I will do that. So I'd ask everyone to please rise. Please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and now we'll invite Reverend Derek DeTony Hill up from the Shepherd of the Hills United Methodist Church, representing the St. Church Interfaith Council, for our opening comments.
It's hard to hear you.
Okay.
They're going to work on that, I think. Thank you. And thank you on behalf of the Interfaith Council for allowing us to come and pray before your meetings and kind of set the tone. We appreciate that. I live in St. George. We're new to the area, and so we're just getting to know things and getting to know Santa Clara a little bit. I know that there's a wooden cow in our church hall that somebody's going to paint. I think that has something to do with Santa Clara, and that's good. A lot of people don't know this, but the root word for religion includes that ligio, which means connector or ligament, that which connects us. And often we don't think of religion as that which pulls us together, but rather often, unfortunately, that which tears us apart or, divides us. I would invite your reflection on that, not just now, but in the future as well, that how we live together and how we speak to one another and live together is important in terms of religion and pulling us together. So anyway, thank you. Let's pray. Gracious Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your love. Thank you for these public servants who seek to serve their community, and for all public servants who offer themselves. We thank you for this beautiful place on the earth and wonderful communities in which to live. Bless us as we seek to live together as communities that serve the greater good, that serve our neighbors and that we might treat each other as we would like to be treated. Bless and keep us safe, our families, watch over our earth, our state and national leaders as well. We offer ourselves to you, our time and our love, and may we serve you with gladness and with joy. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. All right, so item number 3 is general citizen public comment. And I wanted to take just a small aside real quick. And we recently implemented some public comment rules. So we're still inviting that public comment, but there are a couple rules I want to go over. And generally we have yellow slips back on the back that didn't get put out today. So we still will allow public comment tonight, but we just need to follow these specific rules. So first, public comment should be limited in nature and will be subject to the following rules. Number 1, you must be a resident of Santa Clara City. Number 2, you would fill out the form that we don't have tonight, so that's okay. Number 3, public input shall not be allowed on any agenda item or pending land use application. So the idea is if it's on the agenda, you're not allowed to speak to that. So it'd be like there's some other thing going on in the city that you need help with. Number 4, public input shall relate to city business, be respectful with no obscene or profane language, not contain attacks on any individuals. Number 5, members of the public who disrupt the meeting with undue applause, jeering, uninvited comments, or other protests will be asked to leave the council chambers. And number 6, written comments will be accepted at any time by residents of the city by either hand delivery or via the city's website. So with that, if anyone would like to come and address the council, now is the time to do that, just following those rules. So if anything that's not on the agenda or not about a land use item that you want to talk to us about. So for example, at one point, when I built my house, we had a disagreement with the building inspector on when we had to landscape our backyard. And so I came and talked to the council and got that resolved and worked that out with the council. So it'd be something like that. Would anyone like to come up and speak to the council? So when you come up, just state your name and your address.
So my name is David Pond, 2322 Joshua Circle. I just had a question in regards to public comment and public feedback in the zoning and planning commission meetings. So in a previous commission meeting, there was quite a bit of public comment related to that particular meeting. At the end of the meeting, one of the commissioners stated that the public comment was appreciated, but not taken into consideration in their decision, that their decision was solely for the purpose of determining the completeness of the application. So that being said, how does the public how can the public comment because stepping back, his additional comment was the city council is the legislative arm of the community. Therefore, it's up to the city council to make that determination. So how can we as a community provide our comment directly to the city council rather than going through the planning commission? Thank you.
Yes. So again, we're not supposed to clap, but I know how you're feeling. Council, does anyone want to address that, or I can? So, and we've had this discussion as council in the past, like, should there be a public hearing only at planning commission? Should there be one at city council as well? And I know it varies from community to community. At this point in time, our mayor has instructed us and we've agreed to, and we could always change it. But right now, the idea is the planning commission accepts the public hearing, listens to it, and then passes those comments on to us. And, now it's recorded on YouTube, so any council member can go back and watch those, after the fact. They don't have to just read the minutes. So it is better than it was in the past. But that's the idea, that basically the planning commission takes the brunt of that, and then it cleans up our meetings on this side so they can go more efficiently. But that's something you could certainly reach out to the council about. If you think we should have public hearings in both, then we should be hearing that. And that's kind of the message I'm getting there, that it's hard for an individual to feel like they're actually getting through to the council if you can't even speak directly to us. So council, anything else you'd like to add to that?
I would just add that the planning commission is a recommending body and the city council is the legislative body. So those comments get forwarded on. It's not that it goes unheard on that, but yeah, it's basically to say we're going to have a public hearing. It's time to speak, whether it's at the planning commission or here. But they're a recommending body. Their job is to review the application, review what's being proposed, and then make recommendations to this group, the legislative body, as to what their recommendation would be. So I think that's the purpose of that. And really, it could go either way. But I think in the original application, we've just felt that that's the time to hear public comment, and the time to see that also the time that recommendations can be made based on the public comment. So.
Want me to add? And I guess I will add as well.
I would love to.
I'll sit a little closer.
So
Okay, I'll try and yell really loud. The state statute requires the land use authority to be the one who holds the state statute requires by state code that the land use authority be the one that hears the public hearing. The land use authority is generally your planning commission. It is so in most cities. It is in our city as well. So by statute, the public hearing has to be held with the planning commission, just so you're aware.
And so a council could decide they
yeah.
also want to do it.
If
That's
you
up
don't
to-
like it, you can visit with your state legislator.
Who's here?
Yeah, if you'd like to, Matt, feel free.
The only thing I would add is the comments that have all been made are good and accurate. Not okay. All the comments that have been made are good and accurate, but the one thing I would add. Okay.
So he's working in the back with the amp right now, trying to get it all leveled out. We installed this new system a little while ago, and they're still working out the kinks.
So all the comments that have been made are accurate. I would just add that not every decision that the city makes is the same. There are different standards depending on what application is being considered. And so, it's going to be different for every type of decision that comes before the city. Some decisions are made by the planning commission. Other decisions come to the city council. But I can assure you that the procedures that the city is following are compliant with the requirements of state code. And as has been said, if you have issues with that, certainly it's appropriate to share your concerns with these city council people as the legislative body of the city, and they can consider whether a change needs to be made.
Okay, perfect. All right, anyone else like to address the council? And again, we're just making sure that it's not something on the agenda, it's something else.
Not on the agenda. It's relating again to the
Can you
planning
state
commission.
your name and address, please?
First name is Fred, and the last name is Fogegren. I'm at 2324 Bryson Circle, Santa Clara. At the last planning commission, Curtis Whitehead made a statement that I'd like some clarification on. I'm paraphrasing, but an item that came up at the planning commission, he stated that the item at that time, he had felt strongly against it. However, he went on, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that based upon what he learned as a planning commissioner, he had no choice. If the city planning group recommended this be passed on to the city council, he had to recommend it as well. Is that an accurate statement?
To city legal counsel now, this is regarding public clamor.
So that is not an accurate statement. Again, this goes back to the different roles of the planning commission versus the city council. City council is a legislative body, and in its role as a legislative body, it is empowered to speak on behalf of the public. That's why you elect these officials up here. The planning commission is not an elected body. They're appointed by the city council to assist the city council in the process of considering these land use applications. So they have a different role. They have different things that they weigh in a different way than the city council does. They do not have the same kind of discretion that the city council does. But it's incorrect to say that they have no choice in the way that they make their recommendation. They do consider a number of things, and they can choose how to weigh those things within certain constraints.
A follow-up question then would be, when Curtis Whitehead made that statement on the record in planning commission, why didn't the city lawyer or Mr. McNulty correct him and allow him to make a recommendation or not recommendation versus what he stated that he could not, he had to make a recommendation for approval?
Respectfully, I take issue with your characterization of his comments. I don't think that's.
I think anyone who was in attendance at that meeting understood very clearly that that's what he said. Thank you.
And we can certainly follow up on that.
He's paraphrasing.
Hi, I'm just wondering if we can see the agenda so that we know the full thing, please.
Well, as the agenda items go through, we scroll through. We're just there at the general citizen comment. So as they go through, you'll see the items will come up on the screen.
But we can't talk about what's on the agenda. We don't know what's on.
Oh, gotcha.
And just as a reminder to everyone, these agendas are posted publicly. They're available through the city's website. They're posted in various locations. They're posted on the state public notice website. So every agenda of every public meeting is available to the public before the meeting for your perusal.
Okay, very good. Go ahead. Just name and address.
I'm Ann Evans, 3772 Nicholas Drive. I just have a comment, actually several, about traffic impact studies. It just came to my attention recently how important they are, because the city pays thousands of dollars for these. And of course, it shows traffic volume, vehicle mix versus private construction, delivery, etc., turning movements, traffic warrants, pedestrians and bicycles. So the results of these TIS are critical for city council and planning commissions so that you can make informed decisions about how to vote. So if you vote for something and you unknowingly or unwittingly do not realize that something is omitted from a traffic study, that's one thing. If you have been advised that there are omissions in a traffic study, then I think you have to reconsider voting for this plan or get a revised study that would account for the emissions in a particular study. And I know that you guys have a hard job. I've done this job in another place. I don't want to do it again. And I appreciate everything that you do. But I do have to remind you, you did voluntarily run. We didn't hold a gun to your head. So we're just asking you, when you look at these developments and you look at these traffic studies, that you use due diligence before you vote on these planned developments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jarrett, can I make one comment about that? Just,
Sure.
and one thing I wanted to just mention is the traffic studies in a typical application are usually paid for not by the city, but by the developer. The engineer that provides that study is generally hired by and paid by the developer. But the engineer, when they put their stamp on a traffic study or a soils report or any kind of engineering study, when they put their stamp on it, they're certifying that they've prepared it to the best of their professional ability and so on. So I just wanted to make that clear. The city generally doesn't pay for those.
Okay, very good.
Hi, I'm Don Morris. I live at 3815 London Lane here in Santa Clara. I have a question. I understand that the Planning Commission has the first crack at, or that's where the land use applications start. And I understand probably a fair amount of them are going to be routine and don't really need a lot of super investigating or detective work on part of the city council. But a lot of the issues are pretty big and pretty controversial. And a lot of times us citizens, we don't become aware that there is an issue that the Planning Commission made a recommendation on until then it comes before all you for a final yay or nay. So I guess I'm going to throw my hat in the ring to say, I think it would be really good for transparency, for city involvement, to make sure that there's public time to comment on these significant land use issues. Because as I understand the way things are now, the two big elephants in the room that are on the agenda tonight, public comment is not allowed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, well, I humbly suggest that the council look at that. And if we are a democracy and we do want to be transparent and we do want to get citizen involvement, that when it comes before the final body, that everyone here was elected to represent us, that we have a say at that time. And then you make the votes. You're the ones that we elected to make these decisions. But I think at that point, to me, it's very critical for us to all have more input on these important decisions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we've recognized this for a while as a council. And so that's why you've seen the chain link, big signs that go up near the property and then a QR code that goes up. We tried to make it really obvious when something is coming up, but we understand where you're coming from as well.
Jared, I might add, public comment is allowed in fact, item 1's had 2 public comments now. So it's not there. We're being very transparent. It's allowed at the Planning Commission to speak, and those minutes are forwarded on, and we watch those meetings as well. So I want to be clear that there is public comment and that doesn't get misconstrued.
Well, while the next person is coming up, I would just add, Jarrett hasn't said this, but he mentioned it prior to this meeting that he spent a number of hours reviewing emails from citizens who had emailed him about the items on the agenda tonight. And I know from what I know about these council members that they do so very conscientiously, and they take those things into account when they come into these meetings. So again, just to reiterate, the idea that there's no public input on this, there may not be public input on these items allowed in this particular setting, but there are opportunities to give public input many people sitting in this room have been here giving public input on these items.
My name is Allison Snyder. I live at 2326 Jacob Drive. I would like to know in instances such as proposed developments or zone changes, general plan changes, things like that. When there is a developer who is proposing a change, how much interaction do they get with city council members when they're discussing their changes? How much interaction do they get with the city staff and stuff like that? And then as a comparison, how much time do the citizens that you guys are elected to represent have? We can write emails. I've written at least 4 or 5 about this to you guys. But I have only had one acknowledgement from Councilwoman Hinton that any of my emails have been received. I feel very strongly about what I feel is a lack of transparency. You may feel like you meet certain statutes according to the state code and things like that, but your citizens don't feel like you guys are listening. We feel like you guys are listening to the developers and rubber stamping proposals. We feel like the planning commission is rubber stamping proposals. I'm a lot more logical in emails. I am a very good writer, and I have very detailed emails I've written to you regarding concerns I have about different items before the city council for at least a decade. And I have been able to make comment in planning commission meetings, in city council meetings. Like 7 years ago, I was exactly 7 years ago, I was in labor, and my husband came to the city council meeting, and I waited to go to the hospital so he would have a chance to communicate with you guys, for example. So I feel like maybe your citizens are trying to tell you something and you guys need to listen. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
Good evening. My name's Art Pansing, and I'm at 3866 Nicholas Drive in Santa Clara. And I think what we're missing here and what you guys aren't catching is you're not allowing us to talk to you. You keep putting us off over with the planning commission, say, go talk to them, go talk to them. And we don't get to talk to you guys. Oh, well, you've talked to them twice and they listened to everything you had to say. Yeah, they did, not you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. All right. Come on up, Dial.
Dial Bond, I live at 2255 Jacob Drive, Santa Clara. My question is, what is the job of the city planner, Mr. McNulty? Seems like he does the work for the contractor or the applicant. How much money is the applicant paying Mr. McNulty for his services?
So yeah, I prefer Dial. You don't talk
Well,
about
does
something
the
like
city
that
pay
unless you
him?
have some substantiated evidence of that actually being true.
Does the
But-
city pay his salary?
Yes.
And how much time does he spend with each applicant? Does he have a limit?
It depends on the project. And again, they come before the TRC, the Technical Review Committee, the developer, and then all the different city departments weigh in on that project. And then we rely on Jim to go through and make a report for us based off of all those inputs. And that's something we should probably talk about offline if you want to delve into that a little bit deeper.
I would let the city attorney.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
Do you want to weigh in on that, Matt? I don't want to turn this into a big, long discussion. It's just more, we're here to listen.
I think the allegation has already been addressed.
Okay.
My name is Melvin Taylor, 1401 Victor Street. When the first Planning and Zoning Commission was set up, I served on it in this community. There was 5 members. Is there still 5 members on the Planning and Zoning?
7.
7 members.
7. In the last Planning and Zoning meeting that we were to, there were 3 members attended this Planning and Zoning. If one made a motion, and one seconded it, those two would carry the vote. It seems like to me, if you're going to have a planning and zoning commission, we ought to have all the members there before it's called to a vote and passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the input. All right, anyone else?
Would you like me to address that, Jared?
No, again, we can listen to this and then things can be addressed offline, in my opinion.
My name's Eric Marriott, 4035 Colby Loop, Santa Clara. My question tonight is about the solar letter that I recently saw where the solar reliability charge was reduced and the capacity was increased. So I do appreciate that and appreciate you guys looking at that. I am confused about the rate that is paid to solar producing down to 4 cents a kilowatt hour, when I think that the power cost adjustment letter said that you guys are paying anywhere from 25, 35, 45 cents a kilowatt hour, but you're proposing to pay customers that are producing it here in the neighborhood at 4 cents a kilowatt hour, which I think is wrong. So that's my comment about that.
Okay, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind reaching out to me after, I'd love to talk to you about that. And Gary as well can weigh in on that, but that was a concern we discussed and we felt like we were finding a balance there, but it is understood for sure. All right. Seeing nobody else, we'd like to close that portion of our meeting and move on to our conflicts and disclosures. Council, is there anything you need to disclose about anything that's on the agenda? I do not have anything
Mayor,
either.
I've got on B2, the applicant, I'm actually building his home in St. George.
Okay.
So.
Very good. All right, we'll move on to our working agenda. Number 5, A is a public hearing, which we do not have any for today. So we'll move on from that. We have our consent agenda, which is as follows. We have our approval of our claims and minutes from the June 28th, 2023 regular city council meeting and the claims for July 5th. And then our calendar of events, which is we have a work meeting coming up on the 19th of July. We'll be closed on Pioneer Day, the 24th. And then we have a city council regular meeting on the July 26th. And I would look for a motion on that, council.
I move that we approve the working agenda as presented.
Second.
Do you mean the consent agenda? You said the working agenda. Do you want to just the consent agenda, right?
Consent agenda as presented.
Do you change your second for that? Okay, so we have a motion by Denny, a second by Krista. All right, this is a money item, so we'll start with Denny.
Aye.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, move on to our general business, item number B. And with your permission, council, I'd like to move item B5 up to the top of the list. I think it was intended to be there and just got put on the end of the agenda. Is council okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll invite Jim up to present. This is to consider appointing Kristen Walton as a planning commission member, presented by Jim.
Kristen, can you come on up? Are you still here or did you run for the hills? Come on up. Want to change the tone of this meeting. We've got a new planning commissioner that's coming online. We're very excited to have her. Come on up. For the council, this is Kristen Walton, and if you don't mind, I'll read from your bio. Thank you for being here tonight. She was born in Salt Lake City and raised in Bountiful, Utah. She's a proud resident of Santa Clara for the past 27 years. That's a long time. She has a bachelor's degree from Utah State University in business education. She taught business classes at Indian Hills Middle School. We'll have to talk. And Sandy, my 3 kids went there. The 3 I support on that extra money I get from developers. Before relocating to Washington County for my husband John's employment, I left teaching full-time and became a full-time teacher homemaker to my 5 children. Once they were all in school, I went back to teaching as a substitute teacher in Washington County School District and still enjoy being in the classroom. She loves Santa Clara and feels very lucky to call this beautiful place home. She's volunteered with the PTSA over the years and enjoys her volunteer work at Switch Point Community Center, serving in her church, hiking, biking, and generally being outside and most of all, spending time with my family, especially my 4 grandchildren. Welcome, Kristen. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, council.
Or
you
the
want to ask
council may
Kristen
have
anything,
questions.
or-
We're happy you're here. I was just trying to, cut the air there. So
I'll just say we're very excited to have you on the planning commission. I think you'll be excellent there. Council, anything else?
we're excited to have her, and her first meeting's tomorrow night.
Okay, so we
So
do
we'll
need
see you
an
tomorrow.
actual motion on this.
Do we need a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we appoint Kristen Walton as a planning commission member.
And I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Elena, second by Krista. Any question on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Welcome. All right, we'll move on to B1, which is discussion and action to consider a rezoning of property at 400 East Patricia Drive and Pioneer Parkway. The applicant Clayton Levitt is proposing to rezone the property from R110 Single Family Residential Zone to the Planned Development Residential PDR Zone and approve ordinance 2023-15, and it's presented by Jim.
Jim,
Thanks.
before you start, sorry, I can just hear some whispering and some
Yeah.
talking in the audience, and I know some are having a hard time hearing. So I would just invite anybody that wants to have a conversation aside, go ahead and step out. You can come back in when you're done, but obviously, we want to make sure everybody can hear what's happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. If we could turn to the project plan that's right below the staff report on this item, the updated project plan. It's interesting that Kristen taught at Indian Hills Middle School. While my kids were growing up, we lived in Sandy. All 3 attended Indian Hills Middle School. I'm proud to say all 3 are college graduates, with my youngest graduating on May 5th from his dad's alma mater, the University of Utah. So it's good school, good area. So I'm going to go to the project plan that's in front of us this evening. Well, first of all, I'm going to take a step back. This item is a public meeting, and this item is on tonight's city council agenda. The public hearing was held by the Planning Commission. Excuse me. Public hearing was held by the Planning Commission on May 25th, 2023. The city council will recall that that was the second public hearing. There was also a public hearing that was held for this item on March 23rd of 2023. At the March 23rd public hearing, we had a good amount of people that attended the meeting. We had 26 people speak to the item. When the item went back to the Planning Commission on May 25th, we didn't have as many people, but we had a good amount of people show up, and we had 17 individuals speak to the item. So in 2 public hearings, the Planning Commission does feel that they've heard what the public's issues are, what their concerns are. We've had 42 people have the opportunity to stand up and make comment. So I just wanted to make that clear. The applicant is Clayton Levitt. This property is 18.09 acres. The applicant's proposing to rezone the property from the R110 single family zone to the PDR zone to allow for a planned development residential project, which would include single family homes, multifamily townhomes, open space, and amenities. I talked about the public hearings that were previously held. The first one on March 23rd ended in a 3-3 tie. So we had 6 planning commissioners there. No other substitute motion was made, so no recommendation was provided by the Planning Commission, and you have that in your minutes. Then a public meeting for this project was held by the City Council on April 12th of 2023. A motion was made by the City Council to table the item to allow the applicant to work with staff, incorporate some of the City Council comments, and propose a new layout with slightly lower densities. That motion passed with a 3-2 vote, and you have the minutes on that. The updated plan you see before you includes 133 units on 18.09 acres. This equates to a density of 7.35 units per acre. A total of 82 single-family lots or pad lots are proposed, along with 51 multifamily townhomes. The previous plan included 144 units on the property. This included 69 single-family lots or pad lots, along with 75 multifamily townhomes, which equated to 7.96 units per acre. Now, the difference between the 2 plans is 11 units. It's an 8% reduction to the yield, or the number of units across the site. And with this layout, you can see on the plan, if we open it up a little bit bigger, Brock, And then the bottom, you can see that 62%, there's a legend down below, 62% of the new units proposed are single family, with 38% being multifamily. Now, the previous plan that you reviewed for 144 units had 48% of single family units with 52% of multifamily. So although the reduction is the 11 units, the change in single family to multifamily has changed quite a bit. If we can go down to the next sheet, we have a phasing plan. Just so everybody can see, they're proposing 7 different phases. Phase 1A would include 14 standard single-family lots fronting Patricia Drive. Then you see phase 1B. I'm not going to go through the units, but this includes a his and her changing room, a pool, outdoor patio, that type of thing. You know, seating area. Phase 2 includes open space and pickleball courts. Phase 4 also includes open space, a green court in that area. And phase 6 includes some open space with a pavilion. And then phase 5 in that corner would include the detention area. And so from here, if we could go to the building elevations themselves, I think that's a separate attachment that Selena had that went out. I think it's 1A, yes. There we go. And so this is a single family pad lot. This is a 1-story home. Home sizes would range from 1,500 to 3,000 square feet. Again, they've got some traditional lots on lots 1 through 14, and then they have the standard pad lots 31 through 46 and 48 through 69. If we scroll down, there's also a 2-story model, which would be typical. This is the 1-story. The Rambler would be approximately 20 feet in height, with the 2-story being 27 feet in height. I think it's one more. Got a lot of slides here. Here we go. This is the 2-story that's being proposed by the developer. And so the way the single family lots break down, there are 40 pad lots, standard lots. There's the 14 standard single family lots, and then there's 28 narrow lots. So that's a total of 82 single family. If we continue to scroll down, keep going. We're just going to go to the townhomes. Let's go to the ones that are colored further down. So here's a townhome that they're proposing, front load orientation with a rear load garage. This is a 6-plex. They are showing some 6 and 4-plexes, but you get an idea of the style, the design, and the building materials. If we can continue to scroll down. Thank you. I think we'll go to the single level townhome next. I think it's the next slide. Here we go. This is proposed adjacent to 400 East. This is a single story townhome, approximately 1,100 square feet in size, but does include a 1-car garage with a 2-car driveway. This is proposed as the affordable or lowest price point for the project. And then let's go ahead and continue down. Further, these are the narrow pad lot homes. And as you can see, these are approximately 25 feet wide, 1,800 square feet in size. So I think there's 4 or 5 of these. If we can scroll down to each one, and then we'll just go to the materials board after each one of these. Each one's a little bit different. 16-foot garage, 16-foot door, 20 by 20 garage. Keep going. Right there, we can open that up. So this is a materials board for the single family homes. This includes 3 brick options with, you know, different coloration and for the roof and materials. And then if we can scroll down one more, this includes the townhomes. This includes both a stone and brick option, and the single family homes also have a stone option as well. If we can go back to the phasing plan, the new project plan that's at the back of the staff report. I think it's in the other document that had the staff report. It's right after the staff report. Thank you. So again, amenities are included in phases 2, 4, and 6, and you can see that here, the central area with the open space, and then the areas to the right and to the left. We also have a public trail required, an 8-foot trail along 400 East. to comply with our 2018 Trails Master Plan. This trail would tie into the existing section of trail along 400 East frontage and to Tuscany project, which connects to other trails in the area. They have done that. I think if we go to item 1B, that's our landscape plan, and then I can wrap this up. The landscape plan, here we go. That's the overall landscape plan for the site. And then if you scroll down one more, you can get an idea of landscaping for a townhome unit to the left and a single family unit to the right. Again, all landscaping has to comply with city ordinance, our water efficient landscaping and conservation standards as per the Washington County Conservancy District to conserve water. We know that water is very vital and we don't have a lot of it. If we go back to the project plan and then I'll finish, I just want to talk about the roads. These are public roads. We require public roads in Santa Clara City. So all of this interior street system are public roads. It's a 45-foot public road that includes 30 feet of asphalt, 2.5 feet of curb and gutter with a 5-foot sidewalk on each side. So everybody has a sidewalk in front and can walk. There are also connections to the interior green space areas from the sidewalks that have pathways for potential residents and visitors to access those areas. The only private drives we have are adjacent to 38 and 39 and 56, 59 and 60. So those are the only private driveways that the applicant is proposing for the project. Briefly, I just want to talk about parking for the multifamily. They're showing 203 parking spaces for 51 units. That complies with ordinance. That's 4 parking spaces per unit. Ordinance requires 1 covered and 1 uncovered for 2 parking spaces per unit. They have submitted a soils report and it indicates that there is expansive clay in the site in multiple locations to the north and south. However, the site is suitable to support residential slab on grade construction. A traffic study has been submitted and done by Hales Engineering. 2 project accesses were assumed, which resulted in acceptable level of service at intersections. And that's at Pioneer Parkway and 400 East. Originally, there was a 3rd access to Patricia, but that has been removed with the redesign to have 14 single family lots facing the lots on the other side of the street on Patricia. The applicant has submitted a project narrative, which you have a copy of. A 6-foot block privacy wall is required by city code along Pioneer Parkway and 400 East for homes that rear load onto an arterial road. And then owner occupancy. This was brought up by the council on April 12th. There was a concern about the multifamily townhome units being owner occupied. The applicant has agreed to a minimum of 50% of the multifamily townhome units being owner occupied. That's something that could be addressed in the CCNRs. As far as the code goes for rezoning consideration, we've talked about this multiple times. 17-18090 of city code has the standards in place. We have items A through H. The application is compliant with the items, with the exception of item C that states, are there substantial reasons why the property cannot or should not be used as currently zoned? The response to that is no. The current zones are R110. The developer could develop R110 lots. Now, the general plan talks about this property being in a medium density land use designation. And the proposed project plan rezone application includes small lot, single family homes, townhomes, open space and amenities for residents. The proposed use of the property is encouraged by the general plan. Now, as far as neighborhood response, we talked a little bit about the public hearing process and getting notice out. Notices were sent to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property prior to both the March 23rd, 2023 meeting and the May 25th, 2023 meeting. We also posted the property as per state code with a sign that gives a project narrative, but we've gone above and beyond requirements as per state code. We put a banner out to make it clearly evident that there's something going on, that something's going to be discussed on the property. And then the week before, we go back a second time, put a QR code up, which allows people to link to the city website to see all the project material. So all of that has been provided and we meet all requirements. Now, this meeting is a public meeting, not a public hearing, because we've had 2 public hearings with the Planning Commission as previously stated. You also have 2 resident petitions. One was submitted at the public hearing on March 23rd. The other one was submitted after the meeting. We've talked about state code considerations and the fact that state code and our lawmakers have put statute in place that one public hearing is required. We've done that. We've had 2 public hearings in the case of this particular project. So our recommendation is as follows. The Planning Commission held a second public hearing on May 25th, 2023. A motion was made to recommend approval to the City Council and passed on a vote of 3-1. City staff recommends that the City Council review the submitted rezoning application and project plan to determine if the application is complete. If the application is determined to be complete, City staff would recommend that City Council consider the application subject to the following conditions. And briefly, I need to mention the changes. So condition number 2 is changed because the number of units has changed from 144 to 133. Condition number 5 is changed. Previously, the open space was 33% and change. Now it's just under 35%. So it's increased by 1%. Condition 10 is changed because the number of multifamily dwelling units has changed, and that's 203 parking spaces. Condition 14 has changed. This talks about 50% of the multifamily townhomes being owner occupied. And then 15C, that is where it states the following. There are not substantial reasons why the property cannot or should not be used as currently zoned. The applicant intends to do a PD subdivision with both single family and multifamily townhomes as per the MDR land use designation of the general plan. So he has a right to apply for that land use and a plan that would meet that. And then we have the following findings. 1, that the rezoning is compliant with the Santa Clara City General Plan, Section 3.4.1, residential land uses, MDR. 2nd, that the MDR land use designation allows for townhomes, multi-unit buildings, and small single-family structures on small lots. And 3rd, that other properties in the immediate vicinity, both north and south of the site, are zoned planned development residential. That's what I have for now. Mayor Pro Tem Waite, I'll sit down and see if you have questions for me. The applicant would like to speak as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so first, do we have any questions for Jim? Okay, we invite the developer up to give a short presentation on any changes you've made or anything else you need us to know.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I also appreciate the recommendation and the effort that is given in the Planning Commission meeting. And the diligence of these people that it really take a lot of their time and effort and doing what they feel is best for the city and in compliance with the code and ordinances of the city. First of all, we are very excited about our project. Our number 1 priority is to make the surrounding area a better neighborhood. That's our number 1 goal. We want to, I'm trying to keep it short, so I'm going to go with this script here I put together. We want to provide diversity with various home options and flexibility to accommodate different entry points into buying a home. We will be creating a clean, quality, smart home community where people can enjoy living maintenance-free. We will have a professional management company to ensure superior neighborhood with no trash, weeds, etc., where the CCNRs are enforced. We will have a resort-style pool with pickleball courts, children's playground equipment, pavilions, large turf areas to have neighborhood events. Our plan creates an interactive neighborhood for all stages of life, promoting a sense of community and of belonging. We feel we have substantially changed the plan that you saw previously. We decreased our townhomes 32%, a 24-unit reduction. And of the 51 now total townhomes, 21 of those townhomes are single level, as represented in the yellow. We want to create diversity here in our plan, so everything's not cookie cutter and the same. And even though only 2 house plans were shown, we're going to have probably 6 or 7 single family house plans in our development, ranging from 1,500 to 3,000 square feet. On the single family lots, they could even be a little higher than that, in square footage. We also increased our single-family homes by 19%. That's 82, up to 82 homes. We needed, after we had our last public hearing here with the city council, it was suggested we go back and talk to the city staff and incorporate some of the things that were talked about in our meeting, which we feel we have. City staff recommended to us opening up the 2 middle sections that you see there where the pool and the pickleball courts are, and we put all single-family homes in that area. Just to the north of that, we also eliminated 5 fourplexes that are 2-story. They're not there anymore. And we opened up that space with single-story townhomes as well as single-family homes. So it really opens up that space as was suggested. We recognize in previous meetings that our property is a transitional piece with multifamily to the north, single family to the east, and planned development to the south. We need the PDR zoning in order to buffer and transition with our neighbors surrounding us. We can't do this in an R110 zone. In a work meeting a little over a year ago, we came here with a plan showing mostly all townhomes. And the city council, listening to the residents, said that they want more single-family homes. And I feel like we've listened to what the city is recommending to us, and we changed all that. As a guide to us, and as a reference in the general plan, we really got to know the general plan a lot better from that very first meeting. But I just wanted to state this to help maybe all residents understand the guide the general plan offers. On page 22, it states the land use and building types on both sides of a street should be similar. Transitions between land use, size, and type of building should occur in the middle of a block rather than the middle of the street. Development along a street should match, i.e., single family along Patricia, multifamily along Tuscany, single family pad lots along Pioneer Parkway, which we've done. Just like Village on the Heights and Heights West want to have compatible like homes next to them, we too as property owners want this transition and buffer to the north with the existing multifamily homes next to us. We strongly feel our project fills a need in the marketplace. There is a void, and in order to be able to match this need and void, we need to bring home prices down. Quarter acre lots, you're going to be selling 800,000 plus for a finished home and on a quarter acre lot. That's what they'll be going for. To bring home prices down, we feel we need to build on smaller pad lots. And this in turn creates more density. This is what made Village on the Heights so successful. You're able to bring the sales price down. We feel our plan is a good balance of our property rights with the property rights of the surrounding property owners. Our plan conforms to the requirements of the city's land use regulation, land use decisions, development standards, and is compliant with the general plans, city codes, and ordinances. We feel we've done everything the city has asked us to do. And we respectfully request your approval of our application. Do you have any questions? I'd be happy to answer those.
Council? Any questions for?
I have
Clayton?
one actually. So you reduced this number of townhomes and are agreeable to the 50% owner occupancy in those townhomes. Would you be agreeable to 50% owner occupancy in the pad lots as well?
Would it be better just to do it 50% of the entire project?
Or the entire, that would be great for me.
I don't know, Chase Levitt's a partner with me on this. So I can't, if we did 50%, here's the thing. As a builder for the last 30 plus years, oftentimes on our single family homes, we would have folks up north getting ready to retire. So they wanted to come down and buy a home. And they're probably 2 to 3 years out, maybe 4. So they'd buy the home and then they would buy the home and then they want to lease it out. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. We had several that did this. Just wanting to make sure they got a home and were able to do that. So I don't think we'd object to, I think there's still tons of lots here, 82, 51, 50% of that being owner occupied. If that's would make you happy, I feel like our project is not going to be transitional. People are, if you look at the plans, everything's open to one another. We're not going to have a lot of big fences in the backyards and so forth. We're going to know our neighbors and we're going to have events to bring the community together. But we'd be open to that, sure.
Thank you.
Question. The existing zoning would give you about 3.5 acres with lots per acre, which would equate into 70 homes. And what you're suggesting is 132, which is considerably denser than what the property existing zone is. And I see nothing that comes back to what was suggested in our plan, or our city council by a chance of changing it to an R16, which would give you 120 homes, actually 5.5, but which is a considerable reduction down from your 132. And I don't know that there is such a thing as a transition zone. I've never seen a transition zone or know of one that has worked. Either it is high density or it is not high density. And according to what I'm looking at, justification for a zone change needs to be shown by the applicant. And the R110 zone fits this piece of property just fine. And the suggestion made by city council was that you come back with something different than what you've come back with.
I can quote the motion, but I don't want to argue there. But the bottom line is, Denny, as I just stated, that we're right across the street from, in our opinion, a not so great looking project that's multifamily. And if you follow the general plans guidelines, which we have all around the project, you match what's existing. And unfortunately, we've got lots of things going on. That's a PD zone, a PDR zone in Tuscany Rose to the north. It's a PDR zone, Village on the Heights to the south. And then there's the zoning of R110 to the east. And a considerable amount of time was spent almost 10 years ago with this general plan, and the residents, we wanted, we're bringing all this commercial in. We're the people that are going to be having jobs to work close by. Where are they going to go? And it was encouraged and highly recommended that we have a diverse, this states right in the general plan, that we have a diverse amount of housing that people can be able to get into. Right now, single family lots, quarter acre, $10,000, $800,000.
Well, I got one if you'd like to buy it for that. But.
Is it a new home, Denny?
No, the lot's there though.
No, well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. So.
And what I'm talking about
And I
is
don't
the
think-
fact that when we suggested this and it was tabled, it was a suggestion that it comes back with changes that were significant in density.
I guess we felt that there needed to be some slight changes that needed to be made to soften up some areas. And in working with the city staff, they suggested what they suggested, and we said, that's great. We'll change these couple of areas. Do you want to make, if you want to make all the single level along East 400 East, all single family, smaller pad lots, we could do that. It just starts. We love this plan. It's good. Once you see it done and build out, it's gonna be a great neighborhood, and you're gonna have great amenities.
In the area that you're talking, we already have in the neighborhood of 800 townhomes. You got 465 up in Tuscany and Artesia. You've got 185 across from the middle school. There are already enough density in that area to help us with the state regulations as far as diversity is concerned. It's all there. This was zoned R110, general plan to R110, because that's what fit.
General
for the
plan,
area.
5 to 12 units per acre in a medium density residential, because that's where residents felt like the density should be. It's right there.
Well, it's an R110 right now, not
Right.
medium density, R110. And so to me, I don't see any reason to change the density.
Okay, we can.
Unless you're willing to make some adjustments, considerable adjustments, not 12 units, but considerable adjustments in the numbers.
Is the problem the units or is the problem the townhomes? Because in talking with
Problem's the
staff,
density.
and planning commission, it was the townhomes. We don't want any more townhomes. You just quoted me a large number of townhomes. And a lot of the townhomes are probably vacation rentals, which it's apples and oranges is what you're comparing between us and the vacation rentals. So there's not a whole lot of this project in our plan in Santa Clara. And that's what was expressed at the planning commission meeting, is that there's a need for our project. And that's why we got a yay vote.
In my vision, the need is for R110 lots rather than for
Okay.
the densities that you're suggesting. And again, that's my opinion. And I certainly feel that that supports the general opinion of the public, is that the density levels need to be controlled and protected within Santa Clara.
Okay, council, do you have
other
any more
questions?
questions for the applicant?
I've got a question specific to parking, and it might, so if I calculate it right, you've got 386. Is that the right number?
It was a little less than that, wasn't it, Jim?
Jim, if I'm looking at parking and I think it's there at the bottom, am I adding those up? I have it at 2.90 units, parking stalls per unit. Or am I adding those wrong?
They did it based upon the parking stalls for the townhomes only,
Yeah,
correct?
so we have 203 parking spots, either covered or uncovered. They're proposing that for 51 townhome units. And then the front load, I'm sorry, let's see, rear
That's
loaded
the total.
homes. So that is just on there, that is just all your multifamily. But all the single family units have a 2-car garage with a 2-car driveway. So all of the, standard lots, single family lots, pad lots, whatever we want to call them, they have parking for 4 vehicles. And it looks like all the multifamily, they're proposing parking for 4 vehicles. We have public streets, or they're proposing public streets, and then there are 20 guest parking spaces adjacent to the central amenity as well on the site.
Okay, so the 120 and the 63 are the total. I guess I'm a little confused. I'm
Yes.
looking at the 120, 63 takes it to 203. Those are just townhome units only.
Just
Correct.
townhomes.
We're talking
Those are just
town.
the town.
So that's the calculation in on the town.
Yes, just
Yeah.
townhomes only.
So 4 per unit.
Yeah, where we're 2 required, we've got 4.
Okay, and then the single family homes obviously have garages.
And-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I'm sorry, yes, basically there's 4 proposed parking spaces for each home or unit throughout the
Okay.
project.
so the parking on there is specific to the townhomes. As far as single family lots, 1 through 14 will have driveways that come out onto Patricia,
Yes,
but no community access going out onto that. The access comes off Pioneer Parkway and 400 East as shown. And then the units basically facing 400 East. And the reason I'm asking is these were questions that were brought up, concerns from residents. So the units facing west, facing 400 East, all of those are single level. Units 61 through 69, then
no,
The-
just the townhomes, 100 through 114 in the yellow, as well as the ones across the street, those are all single level.
okay,
townhomes.
just it's the yellow townhomes. would be
Yes,
the
and that-
single level.
Depending on what the market bears, we'll have both single and 2-story from 61 to 69.
Okay. Okay. And then just clarifying on Councilwoman Hinton's comment. So you would agree to a 50% across that was a question I had. Was that across the board? Specific, is a 50% owner occupancy in the CCNRs? That will be across the board for the entire project.
Would that make the council feel comfortable?
I think that was an ask for, I didn't know if it was specific to the townhomes or, I just wanted to clarify
Well,
that.
in the write-up, it's townhomes, and I think your question was, can we expand that?
Yes. Could you expand that to 50% of the entire project?
Okay, yes, we can expand that to 50%. That's gonna be easy, because interest rates at 7 to 8%, gonna be hard to come by, and the rents it just doesn't pencil, so. So we're gonna sell a lot more, and more of them are gonna be owner occupied.
And I just know that was an important ask in the last meeting. The question on the HOA, your plans, again, this is probably getting in the weeds a little bit, but your plans on an HOA management, obviously you've got, the entire community will be managed by an HOA. Is that ran through your company, hired as a third party?
As a
What's your-
professional, yeah, we'll hire it as a professional company, but we'll be, just like I'll probably be on the board, just like I'm on the board of several others, so that we'll have hands-on and know what's going on and make sure we're a tip-top community and neighborhood. And we think it's going to be advantageous to, as I've stated already.
Okay, well, I think you can go and sit down, and I just invite council to give your comments on it. We can start discussing and then consider a motion at some point. So does anyone want to go first? I can if nobody else wants to. Okay, well, I can lead off with my thoughts on this project. So I have read through all the emails, and I haven't went back because this was tabled recently, and I went back to the emails we got back then and read through them. I apologize, I didn't reply back to those. I spent about 3 hours replying back to emails in the last few days, and I didn't get down to those ones. My overall view on this project is that it's moving in the right direction, but it's still not there yet. I appreciate the switch from townhomes to single family homes. That does help. But I think it's just still too dense. I would really prefer that it's 5 to 6 units per acre. That would blend so much better with the other neighborhoods around it. That's basically what the Village on the Heights is. Right now, we're at 7.35, so we're still quite a bit higher than that. And the general plan calls for 3 to 12 units per acre for that MDR, and we're around that higher end, in my opinion. I'm also concerned that basically units 15 through 30, and then 76 through 82, and then they're kind of sprinkled throughout as well, these really thin 2-story homes. I've asked people to look at those, and they tell me they look like detached townhomes. And I think that's probably true. We don't have anything built like that in Santa Clara anywhere. And I'm not saying like that's a bad thing or a good thing. I just think it'll stick out compared to the other neighborhood around it. And I think that, again, it could kind of limit who could actually live in there long term. It's gonna have, like, bedrooms are gonna have to be upstairs because the whole bottom floor is maybe 1 bedroom and then a kitchen and living area and garage. And so all the bedrooms are upstairs. And so it could limit where if someone could retire into it. And then just one other thought I've had, and this was brought up by a couple citizens, that about the affordability and just we've almost created a shortage of single family homes on R110 lots in the Heights. You look at north of Pioneer Parkway and you have the Nicholas Drive and Jacob Drive subdivision, you have Bella Sol, and then we do have a new subdivision going in behind the townhomes, behind Bella Sol, that will be single family, but everything else is townhomes or vacation rentals. And we have more townhomes coming in the northwest portion of the city that's approved. So there's just so much density in the Heights. We've almost created an artificial shortage of just homes to buy there. And I've talked to SwitchPoint about, is it just getting more units? Is it getting the right units? And they've told me more than one time, it's about getting the right units. And I just worry we've created an imbalance in the Heights, and this project could swing it too far. We may already be too far in some people's views, but that's where I just think if this, like what Denny was saying, if this was an R16, then I think I'd send it through without any problems. And I just want to point out, if you look at like units 8 through 10 or lots 8 through 10 up on the top, I think that's 7 units. And then you count those very thin pad lots and there's like 12. So you can just see the difference. Those are 6,000 square feet lots. And you can get 12 of those really thin ones in the same space as 7 of the 6,000 square foot lots. So that's kind of that density difference that I'm concerned about, that you'll drive in there and they'll just look just too dense in my mind. It won't blend with the neighborhood around it. And those are my comments.
Oh, I can go. Okay, well, I will go. I do appreciate the changes in the project. I do like that the project seems to mirror the Villages on the Heights across the street and transitions well into what's around it. For me, that seems to work. I really like the multiple entry points for different types of homeowners into ownership in this project. I like the diversity of it. And I think that we get better communities when we have multiple entry points. And I think that supports our overall quality of life here, which I've spoken to before in this, when we've talked about this project. And I like it. And I appreciate the 50% overall ownership. I think that's really important to building the community as well. It's having a lot of owners there, not have it full of rentals.
I'm done. Okay, I will go next. I've spent a lot of time on this project looking at it. Okay, I'll try and talk really loud. How's that? I've spent a fair amount of time on this project and reading all the comments. We have been working not intimately with this over a year, but it's been a very long time since it was originally brought to us. When it was originally brought to us, it was a townhome project in its entirety. And we were not interested in doing that. And I know the residents that are on Patricia were not interested in having that directly across from them. I also live in the Village on the Heights, and so I understand what that is because it's directly across the street from me as well. I will echo a lot that I agree with a lot of Councilwoman Hinton's comments. There are a couple of things that I did do. I did go back and reread our general plan. Being a prior planning commissioner, it's really important to me to know what our general plan says. And our plan, if you haven't read it, on page 40, this area is known as Santa Clara North. And the Santa Clara North objective states that it is to create medium to high density walkable compact neighborhoods while preserving environmental features, particularly portions of the lava fields. And then of course it is general planned medium density residential, which complies with that because that is 3 to 12 dwelling units per acre. I did go and look at the individual densities within the plan, and 5 of the 7 phases actually mirror the density in my neighborhood. They are the same density that is in my neighborhood. The only 2 phases that don't mirror that are the ones on the far north end that mirror Tuscany and Blackhawk. So my opinion is they have done a very good job in trying to make sure those densities match the adjacent properties, that along with making sure that those residents on Patricia also see larger homes directly across from them when they look out their windows, which was important to me. I appreciate the fact that they took out some additional townhomes and increased the single family lots. That was important to me as well, so I appreciate you doing that. We also have a rental restriction in my neighborhood, so I appreciate you adding that rental restriction. Hopefully your board will make sure to enforce it. I know we do. So overall, those are my thoughts.
Okay, Ben or Denny?
Yes, there's some things that have been discussed here today, and I want to know, we have some loan expertise, we have some legal expertise. I want to know how we guarantee 50% occupancy.
Denny, I can respond to that. And we've discussed this before, that the city doesn't have an ordinance that we can enforce that imposes any kind of an owner occupied restriction on property. And so the way that this came about is there was a discussion of this issue at the city council, the council being concerned about making sure a certain amount of the units were owner occupied. I know that there's been a concern expressed by some of the neighbors as well on that issue. And so what was suggested as a result of those discussions was a requirement that the CCNRs for the project have essentially a rental restriction, which is permitted by Utah State Code. It has to be in a certain form and has to meet certain requirements. And we can check for that before the first subdivision plat is recorded to make sure that that's in the CCNRs. But as far as the enforcement of that, it has to fall to the homeowners association and the other owners, which is who has the power to enforce CCNRs. The city does not have the power to enforce CCNRs. So our hands are somewhat tied in that the city does not have a way to directly ensure that that happens. That solution requiring that restriction in the CCNRs was essentially what we could see as the best option for encouraging that owner occupation of units. And I just to be totally frank, I don't know of any better way to do it. It is a restriction that that exists in other subdivisions, like Lena mentioned, it's present in Village on the Heights. I've seen it other places as well. It does require that the HOA be proactive in enforcing it.
And then I will go back to my original premise that I see no reason that this shouldn't be an R110 zone. And creating neighborhoods, to me, is as important as anything in Santa Clara. And we're starting to diminish neighborhoods by rentals, part-time residents. To me, it's not what I perceive Santa Clara to become over the years. It was a residential area, looking forward to young families and children moving here. I know we talk about affordability, and absolutely no affordability will come until prices of property come down. They just can't do it, and the prices that are being paid for property almost restrict affordability. So when we talk about creating affordability, density seems to be the only way to create that. And even with that density, it hasn't come. We've created townhome developments here for that purpose, and it didn't happen. So the affordability issue isn't there to me. And again, I see a community, a basis for homes, for families. And that's, to me, part of what this R110 zone creates in this particular piece.
Okay, thank you, Denny. Ben?
Yeah, usually I go first, so I figured I'd wait till last, but. So on a couple things, I do, first on the single family, at an R16 zone, we get 90 single family residents under the acreage. This has 82, albeit they're narrow, but they still have 16-foot setbacks. They have 10-foot setbacks in the back. So they're viewed as single family lots, whether they're smaller, but they will be sold as that. You know, I disagree on the affordability. I guess it comes down to how you look at it. You know, as kids are buying, $200,000 is a big difference in today's, especially in today's market and interest rates on whether they can afford to get in or not. So I do think this will have an impact on that. As far as what's been asked, we've asked for single family homes on Patricia facing that road and what we have. We've asked for the same thing on Pioneer, for a single level on 400 East on those townhomes. And then as far as the transition, and I agree with Denny that it's not a transition zone, but we have asked for a transition. When this started at 155, I think that's where it started, 155, 158 units of strictly townhome, asking for that to go to single family and then transition toward Tuscany Drive, which I think has been done very well. I do like the rental restriction. I appreciate the applicant agreeing to that. I agree. Those are put in place in the CCNRs, and unless managed and operated that way, may become difficult to oversee, but I know it's been done very well in the Villages on the Heights, because at one point we owned a place up there. So as far as the way it goes through, you know, adding that to CCNRs, there's great parking in this, great roads that access through there. I understand the density thing, but I also understand the need for housing and what's in there and the cost of housing, and don't disagree with the applicant that there's a need for all of it. I mean, we've got 1 acre lots and some, and they'll probably sell out at $1.5 million pretty quick, but there's 5 of them. You know, we also have townhomes that do the same. So I like the changes. I like the accesses. I like a lot of the aesthetics and assuming it's well managed through the HOA, I think it will be a good project. So.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other comments? Anything else you'd like to add? I'll just add that I think I don't want to fall into the trap of this was presented as townhomes and we're better. I think it can still be a lot better. And the history of this applicant, this is probably version 14 or 15. I don't see why we can't get to version 16 or 17 and get closer to a density that's much closer to what's around it. So that's how I feel about that. With that though, I think I'd entertain a motion, or if you have any other comments.
I'll make that motion. That we consider the rezoning of property at 400 East and Patricia Drive and Pioneer Parkway. To rezone the property to from R110 single family residential zone to planned development residential PDR zone and approve ordinance 2023-15.
Are you putting the 50%?
I will add, thank you. There are some findings, Jim. I had that.
Yeah, the conditions of approval, I believe it's 14 includes the 50% owner occupied, but you could change the wording. Originally it was townhomes. Now we're saying all the units, right? Correct, 50% of the entire project. So that there's 15 conditions and then the findings, 3 findings. But
So,
that's condition 14.
I will include the 15 conditions and the 3 findings and amend the condition 14 that the 50% restriction, rental restriction be included for the entire project.
Would you be willing to amend it to include that the landscape plan be updated as well? Because it includes the old site plan, not the current site plan.
I would include that as well.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second by Krista. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, start with Ben.
Aye.
Lena,
Aye.
Krista.
Aye.
I'll be a nay. Denny.
Nay.
Okay, that passes 3-2. All right, council. If anyone wants to leave, feel free. We'll take just a short few minutes to let people filter out if they need to. We'll move on to general business item 2, which is discussion and action to consider a proposed general plan amendment for property located at the southeast corner of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane. Parcel SC 6-2-16-435 described as 2.43 acres. The requester is Granite Peaks Investment LLC. And it's proposing to amend from mixed use residential MUR and neighborhood center and C land uses to Main Street commercial MSC land use and approve ordinance 2023-16. And Jim will present on this.
Are we starting on that or were we taking a quick break?
I think we can, yeah. Most
Okay.
people have filtered out.
All right.
Oh, actually, Krista did leave for a second.
So let's
just
take
hold
a
on.
2-minute break.
Yeah, let's
Is
do a
that
2-minute
okay?
break.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to take a break on this.
Exactly pretty good website. Oh, I can do that.
She's freezing, don't she?
My, how times have changed. Huh? My, how times have changed. All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Give you just a few seconds to finish up your conversations. We're all back and ready. So we'll have Jim give us the presentation on this, and then we'll also invite the developer up for any additional input.
Thank you.
All right,
We'll go ahead and start.
Quiet down, folks. Sorry. Before we
With
start.
the
just wanna make
microphone, I
sure.
can speak over them if I choose to. Let's go to, Neil Walter has submitted a presentation, Brock. If we could just go to page 9 of that presentation, it's just the concept. And we'll leave that up and then he can go through that presentation. I think it's the next document. Yeah. So page 9 of that. There it is. One more, right there. We'll just leave it right there. All right. So we can hear you in the background. Just give us a few minutes to make a presentation. Thank you. So I want to be clear that again, this is a public meeting. This item is a public meeting on tonight's City Council agenda. The public hearing was held by the Planning Commission on June 22nd, 2023. The application is for a general plan amendment for property located on the southeast corner of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane. Parcel SC-6-2-16-435 is described as 2.43 acres. The applicant has requested and is proposing a general plan amendment from the mixed-use residential and neighborhood center land uses to the Main Street commercial land use for the subject property. Now, this is the concept plan that's in front of you. It includes the location of a building along Santa Clara Drive with parking behind. The applicant has pushed the building towards Santa Clara Drive and put the parking behind. This follows in line with other structures that have been built along Santa Clara Drive over the years, pushing the building closer to the road rather than setting it really far back. The proposed application includes a 3-story structure that's approximately 35 square feet in size. This includes 3 levels of space. Each level is approximately 9,000 square feet. And then there is a 7,500 square foot basketball court or gym facility. Future access to the property is proposed via Santa Clara Drive to Gates Lane to the future extension of Benelli Trail that you see there running south and east to get to the parking lot. The subject property is in the Santa Clara Historic District, which requires Heritage Commission review. This item was presented to the Heritage Commission on May 18th, 2023. In general, the Heritage Commission was in favor of the project moving forward through the process. The minutes have been attached. Point of clarification there, the discussion did include a discussion on the building design and materials. And some members did request, or actually they all agreed that the item needed to come back to them. If the general plan amendment was approved, that the applicant would need to come back to them with revisions to the building plan and design to them before it could proceed to a rezoning and site plan process, which would be the next process if this were to be approved. So I wanted to make that clear. The proposed building has been designed to accommodate the existing grade of the property, which includes a 12 to 15 foot drop in elevation from north to south off Santa Clara Drive. So you know, if you've driven by it, that differential between road grade and grade of property. As a result, the building would be 30 feet in height to the top of the parapet along the street sides. So the north elevation facing Santa Clara Drive. I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to let the applicant go through that. I'm just letting you know. And then 42 feet in height to the top of the parapet walkout basement side. So the south elevation facing the parking lot. A pedestrian oriented streetscape with attractive landscaping is also proposed. The proposed project, as I indicated, but I'll say, will be required to go through a second public hearing process for a rezoning and project plan, which includes a site plan, where more discussion regarding the building design and site plan layout will be discussed if the general plan amendment is approved. I just want to go through some of the general plan considerations for this area of the city. Right now, the general plan shows 2 land use designations on the property. That's a bit confusing. We've talked about that before. We've had some recent ones that have had multiple land use designations and zones on the property. The current one, the MUR, which is the mixed use land use, states the following. The mix of uses is mostly residential in the form of townhomes, multi-unit buildings, but also may include small lot, single family homes. MUR may also include small retail stores, coffee shops, and offices at intersections with collector streets. Second floor residences or offices are encouraged. And we also have the neighborhood center designation on the property. And the code talks about that, and it states the following: intended to support residential neighborhood convenience shopping services and community facilities, as well as mixed use multifamily residential and office uses. And then the description for the proposed designation, which is Main Street Commercial, states the following: predominantly commercial uses on the ground level, including uses such as stores, restaurants, and offices, with residences or offices on the second or third floors. Now, the general plan states under the mixed use designation, so all of these 3 land uses are entitled, or section 3.4.2 of the general plan. These are the 3 mixed use designations for the city. They all encourage the following: attractive landscaping, push buildings to the street or right of way, pedestrian oriented streetscape, and street trees. Now, section 4.2 of the general plan includes the historic downtown core and states the following: Santa Clara's historic district, historic downtown core includes the area from the bluff to the Santa Clara River and from the East Gateway sub area to where Santa Clara Drive climbs out of the valley towards Ivans. And then consistent with these goals, future development in the sub area, section 4.2 historic downtown core, should strive to mix office, residential, commercial uses. A large portion of the sub area will retain its low density character. Pedestrian access and appeal will be enhanced with a heritage trail along the Santa Clara River. And then we have policies to support this objective. For the historic downtown core, policy 4.5 states the following: all town core development should be pedestrian oriented, maintain the core area's existing small scale character, and maintain historic building setbacks. And to achieve this goal, we have an action that states 4.4, it states work with the EDC to attract cottage, specialty retail, restaurants, businesses, and convenient commercial uses. And then section 5.22 of the general plan talks about historic preservation and economic development, and states, without exception, economic development studies confirm that preservation and enhancement of historic resources yields significant economic benefits. And then the last section I want to state from the general plan, and there's a few here, but there's quite a few for the historic district. Section 6 of the general plan includes economic development and states economic development. First of all, there's an economic development objective. And it states attract new businesses and retail to Santa Clara to broaden and increase the sales tax base and to provide increased local employment opportunity. And then policy 6.1 supports it. The city supports development that proposes mixed use land uses to help diversify the city's income and maintain city services. So next I want to talk about the neighborhood response we've received. So we did notice the property as per state code. Notices were sent to all property owners within 300 feet. Subject property was also posted as per state code, which is our real estate sign, which includes a narrative. But we also posted it with a banner sign 2 weeks prior to the public hearing. And then 1 week prior, we put a second banner sign up with the QR codes so residents would have access to the material on the city website. We did have a total of 8 individuals speak during the public comments, and you can see that, or public hearing, in the minutes from June 22nd, 2023. We believe, I think we had 23 or 24 residents sign in, 8 chose to speak. And then we did receive a letter from Denise Webster on June 22nd, 2023 at approximately 3 p.m. in the afternoon. This letter was directly forwarded to Planning Commission members prior to the meeting. That's been attached and included in your packet. We also received an email from Mandy Gubler, who is on the Heritage Commission in support of the project. And so that's been provided to you as well as the Planning Commission. Again, this city council meeting is a public meeting as the public hearing was already held by the Planning Commission on June 22nd, 2023. And then we do meet state code considerations. State code requires 1 public hearing to be held by the Planning Commission. That was done on June 22nd of 2023. We've determined that all state code requirements have been met. Our city staff recommendation is as follows. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 22nd, 2023. A motion was made to recommend approval to the city council and passed on a vote of 4-2. City staff recommends the city council review the submitted general plan amendment to determine if the application is complete. If the application is determined to be complete, city staff would recommend that the city council consider the application subject to the conditions 1 through 6 as outlined in the staff report. Mayor Pro Tem Waite, that's what I have for now. I can take a seat. The applicant Neil Walter is also prepared to address you, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, the applicant can address the council if they would like.
Good evening, members of the council. Thank you for your time this evening. I know we've had a long meeting so far, and I appreciate the time and attention to this particular agenda item. I also want to recognize and acknowledge that we have a number of members of our community here who have a significant interest in the outcome here, and I appreciate everybody's perspective and input, and appreciate really the civility and the approach with which everybody's handled the meeting and the comments and everything to get to this point. And so thank you for allowing me to make my proposal. I do want to make one clarification, and I think it's an important one for the record. While I am the applicant, it was noted in the conflict of interest section that Councilmember Shakespeare was building a home for the applicant in St. George. I'm not building a home in St. George, but the end user of this building, if the approvals go through and the building is built, he would be the individual that the home is being built for. He currently owns a home in Kayenta, just to note. As we go through this, Mr. Jacobson, are you the one that has the control of the presentation? If you'd move to the beginning, I'd really appreciate that. I'd like to just note here that it's important as we begin that we're here for a general plan amendment, and the current general plan is mixed use residential. which would mean that high-density housing would be a part of what would be considered part of the current general plan. And really our request today, if you want to think about it this way, is just to remove the high-density residential from the general plan. The change from mixed-use residential to the new general plan proposal, it's very similar, except for just the high-density residential is removed from the general plan that is currently in place for the property. If you'll move to the, well, before you do that, I just want to note that our end use, as you're well aware, is a professional office. And we've focused on that use, although today's not our zoning discussion. We're just disclosing and making very clear that that is our end use. And we chose that end use because we felt like, as we've listened to and read some of the documentation with the history of the property, we've tried to identify what we believe is the lowest impact traffic use and the lowest impact just overall general use for the property, other than frankly just open space. And professional office typically is characterized that way. If you go to the next slide. The property currently is zoned, you can keep going. The property is currently zoned RA, residential agriculture, and it is in the historic district. You can see the thatched area there if you'd like. If you go to the next slide. We did consider what a residential development that was similar to the developments that are in the area would look like on this 2.43 acres. And there are a couple of concerns, and one of the reasons why we felt like residential isn't the best use for this corner, it's obviously feasible, but we feel like is not the best use for this corner, is first of all, curb cuts on Santa Clara Drive. Additional curb cuts are challenging. They're not the safest way to ingress and egress. In fact, even many of the homes that are on in many of the homes that can on Santa Clara Drive provide access off of a side street do just because of safety reasons. There is a 12 to 15 foot change in elevation from the street to the actual property level. And so what that would mean is you'd have to bring in enormous amounts of fill to be able to make a pad that could be built on, or you have to build and essentially back up a home to Santa Clara Drive, which we feel like would not be ideal for a homeowner. So we've at least thought through those considerations as we've thought about what what the best land use would be. If you'll go to the next slide. We did spend quite a bit of time doing some research and trying to understand what the concerns were last time there was a proposal for this project. The last proposal was 118,000 square feet, 2-story with pitched roofs, approximately 30 feet tall. In the public comments, there were a number of comments that were made. There was a concern they didn't want, it was expressed that they didn't want townhomes or apartments. We're removing that use in the general plan. There was concern that it was too large and it needed to be scaled back. We are 1/3 of the size of this original proposal, so we think we've substantially scaled back the proposed development. Too much traffic. We've substantially reduced the traffic impact. The proposed end users, customers are not here locally. This would be primarily used for employers, and so even consistent with, or even compared with a regular office building that would have normal customer traffic coming and going, this would be a lower traffic impact. There was a concern that they wanted to see renderings and see what things would actually look like. And while typically as part of a general plan, we wouldn't go to such an extensive effort to provide renderings, we were trying to be sensitive about the concern of what are we actually proposing and what does this actually look like. And I would just note that while we are providing those renderings, the process of determining what the final building actually looks like would be part of the plan development commercial zoning process that we would have to start over and come back through Heritage Commission, Planning Commission, and back here to City Council after whatever this process is. There was a concern that there was a desire for no Maverick or storage or some other retail or other high intensity uses, and we've obviously avoided those. It was also noted in the public comments at that time, which we've kind of reflected in the previous slide, that because of the need to bring fill, the proximity to the river, some of the other issues, that it was noted in the public comments that single family residential wasn't an ideal use for this corner. And we agree with that, which is one of the reasons why we're bringing this concept today. If you go to the next slide. So you've seen the concept. I want to just note that while the building is 35,000 square feet on 2.43 acres, the footprint of this building is about 15 or 16,000 square feet. And I say 15 or 16,000 square feet because we've provided a conceptual with an idea of what we think, but this isn't a final submission to the city council for an approval of a building with a formal elevation and a formal site, a formal plan, but we've tried to provide conceptuals. I think if we were to be very specific, the actual building of the footprint of the building that we've provided is 16,500 feet, if I'm remembering correctly. Just for some context, one of the things that was contemplated in the in the planning commission meeting where the public comments were heard with regard to the assisted living center was there was a discussion about could there be a land swap so that a church could be built on this corner. And I thought that was an interesting idea. So I looked at how large is the Riesling Chapel. And it is about 18,000 square feet. So its footprint is bigger than what we're proposing. There was talk about, well, maybe it could be a stake center location. Just for some context, the Santa Clara Drive Chapel is 23,000 square feet. And the stake center up on the Heights is 28,000 square feet on the footprint. And so in terms of the size of what we're proposing, its footprint and its visual impact, it's actually smaller than any of the chapels that are here in our community. If you go to the next slide, I want to tell you just a little bit about the end user of this building, and I won't take a lot of time here, but I think it is important because of the discussion about the significance of economic development. I appreciate the fact that a former council member is here who I spent a number of years on an economic development committee with, and we had a number of discussions about how do we bring high-paying jobs and how do we bring good opportunities here. Onset Financial is an equipment leasing firm. And what that means is they don't have equipment and yards for storage and et cetera, but they provide financing to companies all across the country that need help purchasing manufacturing lines or mining equipment or aircraft or any number of things that a business might need to be successful. And they provide financing for those. And they're one of the largest non-bank equipment financing companies in the country. They're based out of Salt Lake. And as I mentioned, the owner of this business currently has a home in Kayenta and has been a part of our community for a number of years. If you go to the next slide, this is their Salt Lake location, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of different businesses that are part of their family of companies. So Onset Financial is their primary business. Onset Gives is their charitable giving arm, and I was really impressed and had the opportunity to be at their December gala this last year where they raised from people who came to their gala $350,000 that was donated to the Utah Food Bank. They do care about the communities that they're in and try and be an active participant and partner. If you go to the next slide, this is just some of the transactions. So if you want at some other time, you can look to see some of the examples of the types of financing that they're providing as part of their business, that if somebody were to be an employee here, that they would be working on. If you go to the next slide. Again, they have a set of values that guide their company. Those values are integrity, continuous improvement, passion for innovation, and customer focus. And I think those are important things to know about who it might be that might have as a neighbor here in our community. If you go to the next slide. One of the things I think that's very impressive and exciting is they've been recognized multiple times as one of the best workplaces, one of the best places for employees. They've been recognized by Inc. magazine, by Utah Business Magazine. And one of the ways that they do that is by providing an environment that is a place that people really want to work. And so there have been some questions, for example, well, why is there a basketball court? Why are the ceilings higher than normal? Why are they doing these other things? And the reason why is it's about providing a workplace and environment that is attractive to employees and where people want to be part of their organization. If you go to the next slide. As far as economic development, I've asked and I just said, how much employment impact do you think that there will be? And they are estimating about 50 full-time employees, which would be very high-paying jobs, and that they would be part of our community and hopefully positively impact what happens day to day on Santa Clara Drive. Okay, I wanted to just review some of the considerations, and I realize that this is a topic that people have many, many different opinions about, and I think that that's okay, right? Because we're trying to understand what the historic district should look like and what is appropriate. One of the things I want the council to know is that we spent a lot of time trying to understand the historic district guidelines and what was expected and required. I recognize there's different interpretations, and I think that that's reasonable, but we did make a significant effort to try and address the request of the city to comply with and try and embrace and represent what was envisioned in what was outlined in the historic district guidelines. So if you go to the next slide, we've highlighted some of these goals that are outlined. Protect the architectural character and fabric of the historic district, beautify all the properties, provide owners and residents with information concerning rehabilitation. We're not rehabilitating, but increase appreciation of the city's historical and architectural heritage, and then ensure new development respects the existing character of the historical district. And I just want everybody to know that we're aware of those and we're trying to be sensitive. I realize that there's different opinions about that, but it's not because we're trying to ignore them or be insensitive about what those things mean. And then the last one is promote economic development, which I've already addressed. If you go to the next one. There are some design guideline goals. I believe that the proposal that we're presenting will enhance the quality of the historic district. We're going to talk about some of the desirable and unique features of the historical district that we're enhancing and we're featuring. We are hoping to perform construction that will respect the character of the historical district. We'll talk about that. We're not doing any demo, and replacement structure should be compatible with existing established character. So we're aware of, and we're trying to be sensitive. And I acknowledge and recognize that there's a problem. We don't have an exclusive on that view. There's other views out there, and I think that's reasonable. If you'll go to the next slide. So we focused on 5 elements: colors, elevations, building materials, porches, and community space, and tried to work those elements into our concept. It should be noted that we actually drew 3 totally separate buildings. So this wasn't the first draft and we just came and said, hey, this is what we need. We literally went back to, drew one building, went all the way back to the drawing board, drew a totally different building. After staff comments, went back to the drawing board, drew a totally different building. And so we have thought about these things and made an effort. The architect stood on the site and spent some time trying to understand the contours and the elevations and what's happening on Santa Clara Drive. So we'll go through and try and feature just some of these. And again, I'm going to keep moving because I'm sensitive about our time this evening. First one is colors. We've chosen, and I want to just acknowledge, first of all, that while we're really here to talk about a general plan amendment, and this typically wouldn't be required, we're trying to be as transparent as we can about what our intent and what our goals are. And so we're providing this additional information so that you can see where we hope to end up if we were to get an approval tonight as we come back through the process for the zone change. So colors, we tried to focus on the colors that were native to the community and reflected in the Jacob Hamlin home. If you go to the next slide, you can see some little bit lighter colors in the Frederick and Mary F. Reber house, which was also turn of the century. Elevations, we don't have a lot of commercial buildings in our community. We don't. And one of the best reflections of this is the Santa Clara Merc and the old post office, which featured clean, straight building lines and an extensive use of glass. And we have a little bit later on, I have some other examples of turn of the century buildings that are built across the state. And they're typically, you'll see that they're brick construction, clean, straight lines, and extensive use of glass. And we've tried to replicate that in our building design. If you go to the next slide. Building materials, by far and away, the most common building material on Santa Clara Drive is brick. And we think that it's also very typical of the turn of the century construction. And so we think it's a great choice of building material. If you go to the next slide. There's a number of porches, and a lot of that you're probably well aware, just the lack of air conditioning pushed people outside, particularly during the summer, and they were looking for a place to have any kind of air movement that would allow you to tolerate the summer heat. And so we have porches all up and down. And so what we've done is tried to make sure we have an open air porch that's incorporated into our design. If you'll go to the next slide. And then community space, we think that it's already been reflected in the discussion about the general plan and the priority here, but the city's done a great job of taking the city office building where we now are and really pulling the street and the trees and everything and making this a community space. And as you can hold events and you bring the community together, that common space becomes a gathering area, and it's been highly successful in helping contribute to make Santa Clara what it is. And so when we created our design and our plan, we wanted to bring in that element of, if you want to think about it this way, broadening the street and bringing the community into the property. If you go to the next slide. So I mentioned this earlier. This is some example of redevelopment in Utah. And I realize that these communities aren't Santa Clara, and I'm not trying to suggest that they are, they should be, or that we should be them. I'm just trying to acknowledge that much of the turn of the century construction was 1 and 2 story, flat fronts, clean lines, lots of glass. Brick is a very common construction element. And as we tried to design our building, we were trying to reflect some of those turn of the century historic architectural considerations. So if you go to the next slide, then I think that we're ready to discuss our proposed concept. And again, while I recognize that today we're technically here for the general plan amendment, we wanted to be intentional about showing you what we hope to be able to do as we move forward. So we talked about colors. We wanted to match the mudstone and the original building materials. Elevations, we wanted to match the clean lines and extensive use of glass. Building materials, brick was by far the most common element of construction. Porches bring the outside in. So we got a west facing porch and then community space. Extend the landscaping of Santa Clara Drive into the building space and make room for the community on this corner. So if you go to the next one, now what you can see is when you see this concept, we've really utilized the common space on Santa Clara Drive around Gates Lane. We've nestled the parking in the back so that the building and there's not any physical barriers that would object or that would block the views of the neighbors who've been there a long time. We've tried to make good use of the space. If you go to the next one, this is the street view. So if you were at Michelle Gray's house looking across the street, this is what the building would look like. The proposal that we've provided meets the height guidelines on Santa Clara Drive. It's 30 feet. So that's pretty similar to if you were to have a building with a pitched roof, right? The pitched roof, we've chosen to use a flat roof because it's better utilization of the space. And we've tried to come up with a concept that we think would be sensitive about the design guidelines in the historic district. If you'll just go, I know you can scroll through and many of you've seen these because they're in your packet. There's an oblique kind of looking from if you were up on the hill. If you'll go again, just a different angle. You can see if you were to be walking on the street, what the space on the community space on the street might look like. If you keep going, if you were turning at Gates Lane and going towards the hills at Santa Clara, that's what you would see. You can see the porch there. There's an example of the porch. It has 2 elements. One is to allow people to enjoy the space outside and get outside, but it also actually helps with the heating and cooling because the west facing windows heat up the building, and this is a more efficient design. If you keep going. Because of the elevation change, our options are to bring in a lot of fill and then try and figure out how to push people up and down a lot of steps. We chose to have a walkout basement concept. So if you think about the 2-story house with a walkout basement, we tried to steal from that residential component to make a good use of the change in elevation. If you go to the next one, there's an oblique. Unless you're in an airplane, you won't see that view, but that's what it looks like. And then if you were in the parking lot, that's the view of the building looking north. So at this point, I think you've seen all the views. We've provided some information. You're welcome to, we can look through the rest of these, but at this point, I'm open for questions from the council. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Council, do you have any questions for the applicant or for Jim? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council, I'd open this up to discussion. And I guess just real quick, I want to just make sure that we're focusing on the right thing. Like, we're lucky to have these renderings in front of us. We kind of know the intent, but we really aren't talking about design or anything in this meeting because we're just talking about the general plan. What kind of development would we want there? Remembering that this is a little bit unique. We recently passed an ordinance where if a general plan change is approved, that developer has a month or a year, excuse me, to get the zone change finished. And if it doesn't get done, it reverts back to what it was before. So it's not a permanent change to the general plan unless the zone change actually happens as well. And this developer actually doesn't have to do that, but has agreed to do that in in the ordinance that we would pass in this case. So does that help a little bit? Just so we make sure we're kind of on the right track. We're really looking at what do we want that corner to be in general. We're lucky to have this to look at, but it could change. You never really know. So with that, I'll open up for any comments.
So I have a few comments just with what's being shared. I'll go first this time, take the normal role, but comments have been made on the traffic. The applicant actually addressed it a little bit, but I think it's important to know that the traffic on an office through a traffic study, this would be about 25% of what normal R110 traffic would provide and about 10% of what multifamily would have in that. Those numbers may fluctuate a couple percentage points, but office spaces, if not the lowest, it's one of the lowest traffic. When you look at those studies, it would be the lowest on that. And see, I mean, I live down the end of Benelli here, and I mean, right now I'm 6 houses away from this until it all gets developed. But it is important to know that the use in this is very low for traffic. In fact, probably the lowest we could ask for on that. On this, I feel, and again, I was in favor of the original project. Now I felt that this was back 3 years ago, felt that there were things that were missing as we all in the renderings and maybe size and scalability. I've always felt that this corner, the corner to the west, albeit a smaller parcel, were set up for some type of commercial. Now we've got, you know, this is when I-15 shut down, Santa Clara Drive does, and we've seen it lately, does become extremely busy in that. So having a commercial frontage with, you know, the walkability and that's there, the parking to the rear, you know, finishing the Benelli Trail there, and then transitioning as we move east and that on this does become the residential component of that, that it's the right application for this parcel. And the applicant stated this footprint, we're down to about roughly 16,000 square feet. That may change as we're not addressing on that, but significantly less than what we were looking at. Those residents that expressed comment originally 3 years ago that lived to the south of this, it pulls all of that structure away from them, nestles it into the road and into the topography there. So there's, again, for everything that we're looking at, it meets what my expectation of what the downtown, the historical district would look like. I think and we can again argue and discuss that, and there's probably no wrong answer to that on what the downtown is, but the reality is you take away the trees from our downtown, and outside of 6 or 8 homes and buildings, it would look like pretty much any neighborhood, and probably not, it's the tree. When you ask what the charm is, it's the trees that give our downtown the charm, and some buildings here, and tying in the brick facade and meeting a lot of what that architecture is. It just, like I said, living close to this, I was excited to see it. I saw the original design, and it was extremely contemporary, and that was not going to work, but this meets a lot of that. And like I said, it's got to go, it's got to come back. We're not looking specific to that. We're looking at what the zone change is. My anticipation is this corner would have a commercial aspect and then transition in the acreage to the east into the residential component, which is already started.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Lena, would you mind going next?
Sure. I did the same thing with this project that I did with the last project and went to the general plan to review the general plan. I'll point out, Jim pointed out a number of objectives and directives and policies within the general plan, and I'm going to point out just a couple that stood out to me for this project. And then I've also spent a lot of time, I have received, I didn't count the number of emails that I received, but they were in the hundreds. And I've read not all of them because I couldn't physically get to reading all of them, but most of them. And I've also been provided a lot of outside comments that were put in other places. I do think that maybe there has been some misinformation that has been put out there about what this looks like. So I'm going to share my comments in that light. On page 37 of our general plan, it says the historic downtown objective is to continue to strengthen the town core as a vibrant residential, cultural, and commercial center, but preserve its historic character and scale, i.e. 2 to 3 story buildings. That's the first thing. And then it says, policy 4.1 says it encourages development with increased variety of businesses and residential uses that complement and protect the historical resources. 4.4 says we want more traditional businesses and restaurants. More traditional businesses and restaurants are encouraged to locate in mixed use and commercial areas of historic downtown core. I love the downtown just as much as anyone who lives in this city. And Ben is right. The charm of our downtown is our tree-lined streets. When you ask people what they love about Santa Clara, they will tell you it's your tree-lined street. I love driving through it because of your tree-lined streets. It will be a sad day when some of those trees, and I know Ryan does a really good job trying to preserve them, but it'll be a really sad day when some of those trees, just by nature of age or disease, have to come down. Because that will change the character of our downtown. I hope that doesn't happen while I'm still here, but eventually it will happen. So I'm looking at this from a land use issue, not the building. I also sit on the historical committee. I am not a voting member, but that is one of my responsibilities. And I will tell you that there was a lot of comments about the building, even though we're not considering the building. And there was a request to have the final renderings of the building come back because there were some suggestions to make it look more historical with some parapets and some other things. So I know that's at a different time, but this will not be what the final building looks like, I don't believe. And then I guess the last thing is, I don't believe that residential housing is the answer for that corner. I've looked at a lot of options for that corner and it doesn't fit. It is a commercial use. Our downtown is going to transition to both residential and commercial. Now, I'm not saying we want huge, big commercials. I think we've got a core downtown where we want to preserve it and we want to make it quaint and we want to have mom and pop shops and ice cream stores and coffee shops and whatever else might be down there. It came up in the historical committee that we have bookends in our historic district, meaning town hall is on the east end. For those of you that don't know, the historic district starts right here at the end of Santa Clara. So town hall on the east end, and the bookend would be the other end at Gates Lane where this particular project would be. And so I'm just looking at it. Does it fit? Does it fit with what we're trying to accomplish in that light? So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Lena. Krista? I'll just say that I do understand what we are talking about today, and that we're not necessarily discussing this design of this building. However, I will say, I think when we talk about bookends and the historic charm, I think that some of our buildings are part of that, and the design of those is part of that. And when I look at this building, I see modern and clean lines, yes, windows, but it to me does not fit in in historic Santa Clara. I think more of or buildings that look like Town Hall, or maybe downtown in St. George, the courthouse or the county building. Things they've tried to, I think, mimic and imitate the older buildings that are already there. And so I hesitate to change the general plan when I'm not certain that we're going to change this very much. And I guess I was concerned in the planning commission meeting, there were some things that were non-negotiable, I think, that the developer mentioned. And so I do hesitate to change the general plan at this point. I'm also fine with the mixed use residential zoning there. I think that's a great option as well, and would like to see something like that, you know, if possible. But I'm not asking the developer to do that, but I don't see a reason for us to change it at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. I have read through, I think, just about all the emails and certainly appreciate all that input. I want to throw something a little bit out of left field. Brock, can you pull up the general plan? As I've thought about this more and more, I think one of the main concerns I got out of a lot of the emails was, is this kind of a Pandora's box? If we make this Main Street commercial, what's going to happen to the rest of the historic district? And while that's loading, it looks like it's only halfway there. I just thought it was really interesting that if you look at the magenta on the plan, so you've got it down by Dutchman's, where Domino's is, all that, and then you've got it up where Harmon's is, and Swig and all that. And it's nowhere else on our general plan, the Main Street commercial, that magenta. And so if we approve this the way that it's been presented, we'd end up with one little spot of magenta there at Gates Lane. And so I asked city staff about this today, and there's still, it's not entirely clear, but from my view, the way I read the general plan, you can do an office building in neighborhood commercial, which if you zoom in, Brock, you can see all of Santa Clara Drive is pink, and that's neighborhood center is what it's officially called, which contemplates, and it was read earlier by Jim, that it supports the neighborhood around it, and it can include offices. And so I would be much more agreeable to doing neighborhood center on there. You're basically just extending what's on Santa Clara Drive into the lot more instead of making that magenta. And my concern would just be in the future, if something happens with this developer, you never know, what are we signaling to future developers on that land? That, I mean, when you think of Main Street commercial, you think of gas stations, you think of, you know, grocery stores, like Main Street commercial. And I don't think that's really what we're contemplating right now, but that could be the signal we send. And so I'd much prefer that we're looking more at a neighborhood center for that land than what's being contemplated. And I'll save my comments in the design of the buildings. I think that still has, you know, work to do. I appreciate the comments we've got from the public. I think that'll all be taken into account as it moves forward, one way or the other. But that's kind of my big takeaway is, and I'm sure that city staff has directed the applicant to move towards this Main Street commercial. But again, the way I read the general plan, neighborhood commercial would be totally fine. And basically what we're saying is what's fine on Santa Clara Drive is fine on this lot. And so those are my comments. Denny?
There are certain areas in Santa Clara that have been zoned for a number of years in the plan, and the increase in traffic flows that are going down Santa Clara Drive and with the development of the South Hills will increase that corner too. And one of the problems I have is taking care of that increased traffic. We need to break up the traffic coming in. Maybe we have to put a street light there or something, but as I've read all the comments from those who have sent it, most of the concern is the visual. Does it reflect the historic area of Santa Clara? And if it does, they probably feel that's fine. But if it doesn't, the public wants it to be historic. And to me, it needs to be historic if we're going to do anything there, regardless of whether it's commercial, residential, or neighborhood. And it is neighborhood, which is a little milder than highway commercial, but this is a piece of property that's very difficult to work with because of the elevation flows. And what's being presented now is much, much better than what was being presented a couple of years ago. And I look at it and say, what do you guys want? And in my mind, this could be a very, very good piece if you could develop it. You know, we built this city office building, duplicating the old schoolhouse, using the same structure and duplicating as much as we could. And to me, what they've done in the county building, the courthouse, or the library, the county courthouse, all of them have that historic look of old St. George and the area. To me, that would be, in my mind, the only way I would look at it. What we're doing now, though, is we're looking at a general plan change rather than what's actually going to be set on it. This presentation was really good, but they will have, if we make the general plan change, they're going to have to come back with a plan to meet the needs and the desires of us. I think Santa Clara is a very special place. I think the more you voice your opinion and get involved, the better it's going to be. And to me, it helps a lot to have you here. And I know that Neil and his family would do whatever they could to make it work. And I'm not going to say I'm going to be in favor of it, but I am going to say that it could be better than anything else that goes on that corner.
Okay, thank you, Denny. And I'll also just add that, you know, reading through most of the emails, I don't think I saw a whole lot of opposition to the use. It's just how it looks, how big it is, things like that. And so, again, I think as a council, we just need to consider exactly what color should it be on the map. You know, what signal are we going to send to developers? And you can put offices actually in, and what it is now, you can put offices there. It's just supposed to be mostly residential, and this isn't going to be that. So it makes sense that there be a change. But should it be Main Street commercial or should it be neighborhood center? And again, I just want to make sure the public is aware, that's just the general plan. It's just the color on the map. It's just sending a signal to developers of what the community and the council think should be in that area. And we still have a whole big process of zone change, because right now, like it was stated, it's RA, so it's half acre lots. And so to get to this point, I mean, there'll be a whole another public hearing, lots of meetings, go back to the Heritage Commission. So I really think, council, we just need to decide, you know, are we fine with what's being asked at Main Street commercial, or should we consider something else?
May I ask a question, Neil? Do you own the other additional property that was part of the original plan that came in? Have you got all of it or just this 2.43 acres?
No, I bought all of it.
And you've got some ideas and plans for the rest of that?
I think the RA zone is appropriate. I also recognize that the Roan subdivision is also a low density. It's not RA, but it's a low density. And so I would expect that low density residential in some form would be the best use for the balance of the property. I just would also articulate that I know it was reflected in some of the other discussion. As a commercial real estate professional, I don't think commercial is appropriate for the balance of the property. And if I may, I'm not an expert on this. Mr. McNulty is. If there was a reason why we could accommodate the use without essentially impairing our ability to move forward with the project, I'm not particular about the general plan specification. You're correct. We sat down with staff and said, well, what do we think is going to be the most appropriate? And so we picked that. But if there's another general plan use that you feel like would signal to developers your desire to continue to protect the historic district and allows us to move forward appropriately, you know, I'm open to that. We were open to that in the discussion, but we had to make a choice, and this was the what we believed was the right choice, but we're open to other considerations if that's the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I mean, council, am I on the right track there or am I off base? What's your views on that?
Matt. Matt.
Yeah, I think we just need to understand that. It kind of is a curveball and it
It
may be
is.
the right curveball. I just think we need to understand because again, are we talking a color on the map that the applicant's still got to go through all the process, the zone change, everything that we've referenced there, but what is that? What is,
So let me address the question this way. And I think the council understands that, but partly for those that are present. These designations in the general plan certainly have some overlap, right? Because they are general land use designations. It's not zoning. It's not really specific necessarily to one use or another. It's to try and capture a vision of what we want to see happen on a particular property, right? And so when the decision was made, in consultation with the property owner and with the staff, when the decision was made to pursue this particular change, there was a judgment call made that, the project they were proposing would fit best with this particular general plan designation. That's not to say it wouldn't also fit in a different one. And so I think that, what Jarrett has said is probably correct. You could probably do this building or a similar building in a different designation. The challenge that we have is, and I just want to say, I support that decision because I do think that for a pure commercial professional office use probably fits best in what's proposed tonight. That's not to say it couldn't be done in another one though. So the challenge for what's before you tonight is if you prefer a different designation for whatever reason, whether it's to signal to the property owner or future property owner what you want to see there and what you don't want to see there. We've gone through the process with this particular application. And so that a different application would have to go back through the process, in fairness to the public, to give them an opportunity to comment on that application. They haven't had an opportunity to see that or comment on it. And so it would require basically the applicant to go back to probably the TRC, the Planning Commission, for a public hearing, a new recommendation, and so on. That's fine if that's what you want, but I just wanted to make clear, I think that would be the most appropriate approach to it. But other than that, I think, the council clearly has a grasp on the nuances of this. And I'll just throw this out. We used to do a lot of general plan amendments and zone changes together, right? And one of the advantages of doing that was that you didn't have a situation where you did a general plan amendment, but you weren't really sure what you were going to get back on the zone change, right? Because you did them at the same time. Well, for certain reasons, we've decided as a policy that we're not going to do that anymore, and for good reasons. But we're finding that, of course, one of the disadvantages of doing them separately is we have to decide on the general plan amendment first, and then we have to rely on the property owner to bring a zone change back that we like and that we can approve. So no question, that is a challenge of this process. It's not one that's unique to this application. It's just the process. The Planning Commission discussed that, and their way of proposing to address that was to impose the 1-year deadline. So we have a time limit when a zone change has to be approved. And if it's not approved, it would revert back. So anyway, I know you're all aware of those nuances, but again, there's a lot of factors that the staff and the applicant and the other decision makers or recommendation makers that have considered this have kind of balanced to get it to where it's at now. So.
And Matt, can you maybe, what was mayor in those meetings when this was discussed as Main Street commercial? Like, I know he isn't here to speak for himself, but I'm sure he's fully aware of those discussions that have moved along, and he's in meetings that we aren't as council. Can you postulate at all on maybe his view on that?
I don't know if I'd be comfortable speaking for the mayor, but other than just to say, we have discussed this application in meetings that I've been in with staff, and the mayor's been present for those meetings. But as far as, speaking for him, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that.
Okay, perfect.
I think again, I get both sides of it. Again, we're talking a color on the map. Ultimately, I think the concerns of the residents and those that is specific to the building, the size, the colors, which all has to be, I think all has to be part of this. And at this time, it almost feels like, if we've set the policy in place for the general plan amendment to allow them to move forward to get to that, which is probably at everybody's top of their list to see what actually is coming back. I mean, do you consider that and allow tonight to allow them to move forward instead of going back through, or do you bring it all in at one fell swoop and do exactly what we just changed? Basically where you would do the general plan and the zoning together with the renderings and all of that. I guess it's from a development side, you're asking an applicant, well, we're going to pause, get everything together, which I mean, from a development side, I'd prefer to say, hey, I'd like to see the general plan get changed so we know we're moving forward with that, knowing that we've got the time clock has started. But it is a different color on the map than specific to this. But
Well, I think with what you're saying is exactly what I think we need to move forward. I have no problem with the general amendment, but we want to make sure that what's brought back is something that can be looked at historically as part of the historical zone, that it's not left in question, and as a developer, that's what we're looking for. And in my mind, if it doesn't come back satisfactorily, then we have the right to turn it down anyway. And so,
yeah,
to me, that's a simple choice.
Yeah, I think again, from that point, I think what we really want to look at is down the road. I mean, if we're okay with the use, certainly they can argue size and that. I look at footprint and aesthetics and all of that. And again, it's smaller than this building. It's shorter than this building. I think it's coming down to colors and and that's where it gets difficult, because as you read the minutes from 3 years ago, we'll bring the community involved and let them to where everyone can agree on it. It's just simply, that's impossible. I mean, there's what I like is we generally can't all agree, and we're just 5 of us. So you're trying to get into aesthetics and that. And so then it comes down to what was built, what have we seen in the downtown. It may be simply the coloring, it may be the parapets, it may be, but I think we can all agree that everybody in this room is not going to, whatever comes back, we're not going to agree on this. We won't. Now, the Heritage Committee, the Planning Commission, the public hearing certainly is going to help the applicant and the architect. And I think from where it is today, where it started. So I'm of the opinion to try to start that process, because ultimately that's where we're all, I agree. I just don't think we're going to put residential on this corner and we're going to transition in. So.
If I may, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to help move things forward, I think that the big question before the council really is, what does the final building look like? And if the changing the land use or the general plan to a different than what is proposed would require us to go through a full process, as Mr. Entz has articulated, then that actually postpones the time till we get to the point where we can actually look at the thing that everybody really wants to know the answer to. And so maybe my recommendation would be, although I've expressed a willingness to move forward with an alternative land use, my recommendation as the applicant would be to move forward with the land use decision or the general plan amendment as proposed, so that we can get with a few members and the architect and start to work on preparing a proposal that would allow us to come back to Heritage Commission and receive a recommendation or not from them, and come back to Planning Commission. And then if we move through that process, then come back to the council. That would be, as the applicant, that would be my request. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. I think I have a question for Dustin. And this is probably just for future. It shows on the rendering like grass in front of the building. The thought would be like if there's a parade that people can sit on the grass, but is that possible with our new landscaping ordinance?
No.
Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. Maybe as you're thinking future renderings that can't be green on the plan. And how do you really make that accommodate parade traffic in a community space?
I thought our strips in the downtown, I thought that was the negotiation we were,
It's still in negotiation,
okay.
not approved though.
We're trying to negotiate at least allowing the green space in the downtown to remain, because again, there's your charm.
Right.
With the trees. And so my recommendation is we fight for that as long as we can even, but.
Yeah, for sure. That's just a tricky one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, well, and just Matt, I mean, do you feel like what's in the ordinance is bulletproof enough where if things don't turn out with the PD zone, that it's gonna just revert back to what it was, and there's not a whole lot of danger of what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of danger in the sense that before anything can happen on the property, there will have to be a zone change application. Like the general plan amendment decision that you're asked to make tonight, that is also a legislative decision. You have a significant amount of deference that's given to you to make that decision. You can consider many different things. I do think that, just in my opinion, reviewing the minutes of the meetings that have been held and where this has been discussed, I think the message has been loud and clear that the design of the building as it's currently depicted is not, up to snuff, and that there's going to have to be some changes made. Those changes will come back through every single body that have already seen this. So it is true. This is the first step. And if I could just comment on the water thing, because this, the mayor is obviously heavily involved with the water situation. And I know he's passionate about preserving the green space in downtown Santa Clara. And so I didn't want anybody to walk away from this meeting thinking that, that there's no possibility of there being green grass on this or any other property. But, it's a significant issue that we're working on with the Water Conservancy District. But just know that the mayor is very serious about trying to maintain the character of downtown Santa Clara in terms of green space. So.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, if there's no more comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the general plan amendment for property located at the southeast corner of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane, parcel SC-6-2-16-435. An amendment from mixed use residential to Main Street commercial, and approve ordinance 2023-16.
Okay, motion by Ben. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Jenny. All right, any discussion on that motion?
Jarrett, before we vote, would it be okay if I just address the conditions that are currently proposed in the ordinance, so that we're clear on the minutes that either is a part of it or not?
Yeah, can you maybe scroll to that, Brock, the actual ordinance? Because this is a little bit unique. Like, this isn't a requirement of the developer, but they've agreed to do this in the ordinance, so they will meet the new ordinance that has that, basically that shot clock for this action.
Right, it's right at the end of that PDF, very end. And I'll just read these quickly. There's three conditions, and these are in the ordinance because they're based on the conditions that the planning commission included with its recommendation. So, council, if you agree with these and want to include these in the motion, great. If you want to modify them, you have that ability too. So this is what has been proposed.
Is it section 3?
Section 3.
Yeah, so
it's
just
the
right there.
3 items at the end of section.
Just a
3.
little bit
So
further down, Brock.
Scroll down a little bit.
There you go. Oh, right there.
So the first one is the amendment is approved subject to the approval of a zone change consistent with the applicant's presentation within 1 year of the date of approval of the amendment. And if not approved within 1 year, the land use designation shall revert back as if this amendment had not been approved. 2, that the building design and elevations presented to the city with this application be modified so that the proposed building be more historic based on the feedback given to the applicant by the Heritage Commission, Planning Commission, and City Council. And 3, that the application for zone change to follow be reviewed by and a recommendation for approval or denial on that application made by the Heritage Commission prior to the Planning Commission's public hearing on the zone change. So just in making clear that it does have to go back to the Heritage Commission in the next stage. So. And I would include those 3 conditions in my motion.
And they're in the ordinance, what we're approving, so they were, but to be really clear, for
Yeah.
sure.
Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that was part of it, so.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion by Ben, a second by Denny. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, let's start with Denny.
Aye.
I'll say aye. Krista?
Aye.
Lena?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously with some pretty clear messaging sent. All right, thank you, everyone. Again, if we welcome you to hang around. We've got some other exciting things, but I think we'll take another short break.
Some exciting things.
Are we taking a break, Chair? Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
I think she's. Where is she? Good to see
I haven't seen it, but
I just didn't want to give him the impression that's okay.
Honestly, that didn't come to me until like yesterday. So I watched the Planning Commission, that didn't click. And then that was great. That's
yours was a little more upbeat, so. I didn't know where she was.
Yeah, I think it would have made residents feel better. It's just whatever the sector drives on this. But the shot clock.
Yeah. They were easy on that, right? So, wasn't it? Yeah, the council wasn't.
How'd you notice that has to be in the store, in the ordinance?
Yeah, everybody said that so far.
Anticipated.
Yeah.
It's very, in fact, the project. It's a general plan. What they for them to come back. Well, it's not. And that's why I'm like, which is the better. Really? Oh, I need to look at myself. Let's. Yeah, I got the binder. Look, I started my binder. I'm still working on it. Yeah, I'm putting a lot of stuff in there. But. It's PDR. Oh, that's right, because we have to use PDR where involved. Well, I don't love what's been there, but I was also like, I just don't want to. I looked at that and I was just like, oh my gosh. So you don't like the residential? I said, I have so many questions. I don't even know. I don't necessarily know what they're doing. That's part of the problem. Because they're separate. So this is just a general plan. Because the general plan needs to change because they separated. The general plan amendment was to change parcel adjacent I don't know. Commercial. Main Street commercial, and I think it's Main Street. Commercial. Okay, that's fine. That means your home is commercial. So there's no residential. Right. No living above. Right. So then you have two others. They want those. As, I don't know how you when there's mixed use. Right, it's just residential, right? There is no commercial use. No, they're just residential. So that, and granted, this is not a zoning. Which goes zoning.
Well, they can vote me away. It's the same. Group that fought us on Buck's. That was, it's hard not to. I'm like, I don't know my house on that corner. Like, that's a perfect then transition into our neighborhood. So, yeah.
Then I stopped.